We're flying into Aspen, Colorado from the Denver area, planning to do what has got to be one of the more infamous approaches out there. It's the localizer DME Echo approach. Aspen sits in a valley surrounded by high peaks of the Rocky Mountains, which alone make this a challenging approach. Throw in some non-traditional nav aids like a back course and a very steep descent at the end, and this is one of the tougher approaches in North America. Let's dive in. First of all, we're going to need an aircraft that can handle the high altitudes. The MSA coming from the east is 15,700. Our flight plan has us at 16, so we have the Cirrus, and of course, we'll need supplemental oxygen. Aspen Approach tells us to expect the approach, so let's pull it up on the G1000. We'll hit proc next to the MFD, then select approach, choosing the LOC DME. We're starting from DBL, the red table VOR, which is the waypoint we're currently navigating to. What that means is that we can go ahead and activate it now since it won't change our route. Let's do a quick mini brief of the plate. The initial approach fix we're going towards is red table, and we're coming from the east. From there, we're going to proceed to the localizer course, joining at the Jargo intersection. Once we turn in, we're going to drop down a few times, reaching the final approach fix DOIP at 11,700. Then it's going to be a slam dunk of a final descent at 6.5 degrees to the MDA. We're going to use KASE minimums, which means we're going to need to keep the final approach at 90 knots or slower and level off above 9,840. We can review the route in the flight plan, along with the altitude restrictions. This is going to be crucial as there are many step-down fixes on the approach. We've got a top of descent, that point TOD, picked out already for when to start down from cruise once cleared for the approach. We'll be using vertical navigation to assist with descent planning. We'll set our bottom altitude 10,000 feet, which gives us a good buffer above the MDA, into the flight director. Pushing VNV arms vertical path mode. When we reach the top of the descent, the flight director will bring us lower in such a way that we cross each step-down fix at the minimum altitudes. Let's set up our nav frequencies. We need 3 on this one. The localizer is in there already, 111.15. We'll need the frequency for another localizer, which is strategically located on a high peak near a ski slope, which allows for navigation along the missed approach. That's on 108.5. Finally, we'll need the red table VOR to identify some radials and DME fixes for the missed. That's 113.0. We're going to be using the DME off the approach course localizer on nav 1 at first here, so we turn that on and see we're still about 16 miles out. Alright, we've been cleared for the approach, so we're going to be starting down at the top of the descent point. We'll reduce power, and when reaching it, vertical path mode goes active and the autopilot starts the descent. Let's talk about the missed approach because it's a doozy. Like we said, we're going to really have to come down fast after the final approach fix, from 11,700 to 10,000 in just 3.1 miles. And if we go missed, we do it not at the runway threshold, but at 4 DME. The terrain on the opposite end of the runway is too hairy to let us get any closer. We're going to start a climbing right turn to 14,000 on a heading of 300. We want to intercept the second localizer back course and follow that out. A back course is the opposite end of the localizer signal. Normally, aircraft can fly the back course on an approach so that both sides of a runway can be served with one nav aid. The catch is that flying inbound on a back course, the needle will be reverse sensing. Chase the needle becomes fly away from the needle. Notice the different shading on the localizer feathers on the right side on the traditional front course and on the left side, as you're facing inbound, on the back course. Now, we're flying outbound, so it's sort of like a double negative. Notice the note, back course outbound is normal sensing. So on both the approach with the front course and the missed with the back course, we'll be using normal sensing. Basically, this is a long way of saying that don't try to overthink it, just follow the needle. We're proceeding to LINS, which is 12.6 DME from red table, then turning to follow the red table 244 radial outbound to Gleno, our holding fix. Back to the approach. We're making our way down to our first step down. We should be crossing Jargo no lower than 13,700. Vertical navigation in the G1000 is doing a great job of handling this. As we turn to pass Jargo, the descent continues automatically to 12,900. We're going to want to switch over to tracking the localizer, not the GPS. Let's set our heading bug on the inbound course 151. Let's go ahead and activate heading mode so it follows that. We're going to be changing up our source of nav data, so we don't want the autopilot confused by that. Next, we'll push CDI to bring up the green needles of the localizer on nav 1. We can once again go back onto nav mode. The descent continues automatically down to 11,700, where we'll be when we pass the final approach fix, DOIP. You might notice that big peak in front of us, which is preventing us from getting lower too soon. We'll need to compensate by making a steep descent on the last few miles of the approach. That's that 6.5 degree descent angle on the plate. We're going to configure early and get slow. The steep descent means we can pick up speed, so we want to bleed that off. Once we approach DOIP and 11,700 feet, the vertical path ends and the autopilot will want to level off. We want to continue the descent on vertical speed mode, so we push VS and turn the knob to set a bodacious rate of descent. The altitude selector arc on the MFD is useful. We want a rate of descent that will get us to our selected 10,000 feet in advance of the missed approach point, so we set accordingly. We're on our way down to 10,000 feet. Once there, we level off. We can see the runway. This is a circling only approach, so we could either go straight in or enter the pattern to bleed off more altitude. But we're going to go missed. To prepare, we'll set the missed approach climb altitude to 14,000 feet. We watch for 4 DME, the missed approach point, down on the bottom of the PFD. Once there, we start our missed approach by making a full power climbing right turn, turning for 300 degrees. We'll be switching over to the remote localizer on nav 1, 108.5. We want to track that outbound. Remember, it's normal sensing, so with the needle to the left, we'll chase to the left. Our 300 heading won't allow for an intercept. We need to chase left, so a heading of about 270 should allow for a good intercept. The autopilot is back on and we're in heading mode, so we'll dial that in. We'll also arm nav mode so that we track the localizer once it comes alive. Notice the dashed blue line on the MFD. The GPS won't help us navigate to LINS along the procedure route. We need the localizer back course for that. We're leveled off and tracking the back course now, looking for the LINS intersection, 12.6 DME from red table. Our DME is still picking up the approach course localizer on nav 1. We don't want that, so we need to switch some things around. The back course frequency is also active on nav 2, so let's push the CDI button to change our navigation source to nav 2. Now we can set the red table VOR 113.0 into nav 1 and not have it interfere with the autopilot. And we get the DME readout from that now. Let's also overlay the bearing pointer for the red table VOR and the HSI by pushing PFD options, then bearing 1. We'll be flying out on the 244 radial from LINS, so when the tail reaches that, we'll know we're there, in addition to the DME being 12.6. At LINS, we'll be flying outbound along the radial, and at this point, we can go ahead and switch over to GPS mode. Mercifully, the hold is one of the more plain vanilla aspects of this procedure. We can either do a parallel or teardrop entry. We'll choose the teardrop, and the GPS and autopilot do a great job of handling it for us. So that's the big scary monster of an approach that is the LOC DME Echo at Aspen. Try it yourself, and if you're feeling adventurous, do it without GPS or any class avionics or autopilot at all. It's designed to be flown with just dual VORs and a DME, so you can really stretch your skills on this. And if you want to brush up on all your flying knowledge, head over to the Flight Insight website at flight-insight.com and check out all our courses and training today.